there is a new faction, and that new faction is the Smuggler faction.
Oh, I can't wait to talk about this.
All right, so this is big. You have a big theory about this that we'll get to in 1 second, but they added the Smuggler faction and event. I'm going to talk about those real quick. The new characters that are added to the Smuggler faction are going to be young Han Solo, Vandor Chewbacca, young Lando, Kira L337, Infant's Nest, veteran Smuggler Chewbacca, veteran Smuggler Han Solo, and Han Solo. Obviously, if you have the name Smuggler in your name, you'll be a smuggler. I feel like they could just change their names to veteran Chewbacca now that the Smuggler faction's a thing, but
now that
that's
the Smuggler
totally beside
faction's actually attached to them. So now we can go to the tease. Yes, I'm not saying this with any certainty. It was just a thought that went into my head, and it makes sense to me, especially since a lot of the things we talked about with the solo characters, right? So, so we talked about if you needed the solo characters to get a legendary, you have to. Most legendaries take a faction, not just certain characters. So you got the Jedi for Grandmaster Yoda, Phoenix for Thrawn, Palpatine takes Rebels. You know, there's just a faction tag that pretty much covers everyone for that legendary, right? And we said that if the solo characters were to have one, it would have to be scoundrels, and there's just so many scoundrels. It wouldn't make sense that you would need those solo characters for a legendary because you have all those other scoundrels to choose from, right? So you wouldn't have to farm them to get to a point where you'd be ready for a legendary. Well, now they've added the Smuggler tag, which put all of the solo characters into the Smuggler faction along with 3 others. So the Chewbacca and Han, the veteran, and then you have Han Solo, the pit raid reward. So all the solo characters in those 3 are now the Smugglers. So my initial thought when I saw this was, what do all of them have in common, right? Well, every single one of them. And it's probably just coincidence because of who's in the game right now. But as far as everyone that's in the game right now, and in this tag, has to do with Han Solo and Chewbacca, right? So let's say we've been saying this forever. What solo character could possibly be legendary enough to warrant having to have solo characters to get? And I still don't think there's one. The only one that it could possibly be is Tobias Beckett. And I just don't see him being a legendary if Jango Fett isn't.
100%.
So
only in one movie. Big character in one movie, but that's it.
Yeah. So I don't see it being him. So my thought went to another smuggler that's not in the game. Someone that is most definitely worthy of a legendary event.
Indeed.
Someone that's been in literally almost all the movies, you know. And that is the OG Chewbacca. The only Chewbacca that is not in this game yet. So my thought was, if you take all these characters, take 5 of them, and use them to get the legendary Chewbacca, then you got a legendary Chewbacca now in the game. You also open up the possibility to later on drop a legendary event for the Millennium Falcon. Who wants that in the game? The real Millennium Falcon, the actual original trilogy Millennium Falcon with Han and Chewbacca piloting it.
Please.
The possibilities are endless if the legendary was Chewbacca. So I'm really, I don't know if this is going to happen, but that was my initial thought, and I thought it would be really cool if because we've been pining over and trying to figure out who's worthy of a legendary event. Well, Chewbacca is most definitely worthy of one. Now, granted, there's 3 Chewbaccas already in the game, right? Okay, I understand. Adding a 4th one might be too much for people, but make him better than the other 3, which might not be that hard, and you probably will be really, really happy that you actually got him. Most legendaries, people are happy about. took it some time for some, like Grandmaster Yoda and others, but for the most part, they've been knocking it out of the park with these kits, and I would assume that a legendary coming this year would be really awesome. So I'm really hoping that it's Chewbacca, and I would be really happy with that. And yeah, so Chewbacca was my idea.
Well, I definitely like that. So whenever you look at this, I mean, you look at all the characters, and they are pretty much all characters that kind of, in a way, help shape Chewbacca. And he's a smuggler. Like, it makes complete and total sense. Especially, they've hinted pretty heavily that, you know, we're not going to see a whole lot of marquees coming up. Legendaries are something that they're going to start turning towards. So we're kind of expecting and speculating that we're going to get that. They've hinted that marquees are going to be used for that legendary, as they've always done. And it's the only thing that makes sense for a smuggler faction. And that's the only thing that they really have tying these characters together. Because the only other instance in which there was kind of like an obscure faction was Phoenix. They almost made that faction strictly so that they could introduce Grand Admiral Thrawn. And I totally agree with you. This is a similar instance in which they are adding a smuggler faction so that they can add the OG Chewie. I'm with you.
I think I might have convinced you. And one more thing to convince the non-believers. These characters are not easy to get either, right? Young Han Solo, he's easy. You can get him from the guild shop, but he hasn't been farmable for that long. I just got him to 7 stars this week. Oh, this week in SWGoH, I got Young Han Solo to 7 stars. I forgot about that. But so Young Han Solo, he's from guild shipments. That's not too bad. Vandor Chewbacca, hard node. Young Lando, fleet hard node. Kira, Cantina. L337, Cantina. Released within a week or 2 of each other, so you had to pick one of them to farm in Cantina. So that's going to take twice as long unless you're splitting time on both. Infus Nest, super hard. If you can get to that part of the hard fleet nodes and 3-star and start farming them, that one's hard enough. Vault of Veterans, if you have RGT, you have them. But if you don't, there's 16 energy Cantina nodes, which now you have 4 Cantina nodes in a list of what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 characters. So 4 out of the 9 are Cantina, and you got to find a way to farm all 4 of them. Not to mention Han Solo, who is a raid reward. So if you're a newer player that hasn't got him to 7-star, there's literally no way to speed that up other than your 3 raids a week. These are not easy characters to get. It makes the requirements a little harder, and it makes them as a requirement for a legendary seem much more plausible when you think about how you get them. Not the fact that we have some of them already at 7 stars, but the fact that what you have to do to get them for the player base at large is pretty tough. So
yeah, for sure. And it's kind of I mean, it's a little bit different than some other legendary events in that this would be a little gifty from CG in a way, because most longer term players, that if you have RJT, you've got Han Solo, you've got veteran Han, and you've got veteran Chewie. You've got 3 of the 5 that would be required, because it would likely be 5 of the 9 that would be essentially required. So Young Han Solo you can get from the guild store, and then you have, you know, Vandor Chewie, who's hard node, and then like you said, Nest and Lando are from the fleet, and then Kira and L37 from Cantina. So if you have those 3, you do Han. Then you just kind of have to go balls out on finishing someone from either Cantina or fleet, which is, you know, 100 crystal refreshes per day to get those. So it does require an investment. And if you're a newer player, they've also spread it out just enough that you can still be a pretty new player and have Han Solo ready. And if you're working on RJT, you could like almost abandon that and switch to Kira and L337, do young Han, do Chewbacca, and also still do you know, young Lando and Nest. And you can basically farm enough of these characters to get ready in a time frame, even as a pretty new player, which I think is quite interesting. And I think all of that combined is pretty good evidence that these are going to be used for that legendary event. And like I said, you have sold me on Chewie.
I'm glad. Now let me tell you about life insurance.
Perfect. I worry that every day that I'm going to walk out and get hit by a car. So yeah, sell me on some life insurance, please.
We'll talk after this. All right.